Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Roberts. We begin in the Northwest Territories, where the territorial government has announced big changes to its affirmative action policy. The GNWT is throwing out its previous framework, which saw Northern Indigenous residents prioritized as well as long-term residents. The NWT government says the announcement answers the calls of advocates who want more representation in government. Jocelyn Chappell explains the changes.
The NWT Minister of Finance, Caroll and Deputy Minister Bill McKay want to better prioritize Indigenous applicants in the hiring process. A major difference from the last framework is it gives equal priority to Indigenous applications, regardless if they're from the NWT or not. It will remove existing priority groups known as P1s and P2s, which prioritized only NWT-born Indigenous residents and longtime residents who are not Indigenous. Wozniak says she's heard that the boundaries of the NWT and the current model doesn't necessarily reflect people's cultural ties.
People who may be Nunavummiut, but see themselves as Inuit and wonder why they would not qualify currently under our affirmative action policy, or Métis, but not members of a recognized group in the Northwest Territories, and again, born and raised here, but don't see themselves as qualifying as the quote-unquote P2 or an Indigenous Northerners.
As of March this year, Indigenous representation in the territorial public service had hit 28.7%. According to data going back to the year 2000, that's a record low. For 2023, the non-Indigenous unemployment rate in the NWT was 1.3%, while the rate for Indigenous residents was 14%. Minister Wozniak hopes the new Indigenous employment policy will help the government's workforce more closely align with the population it serves, which is nearly 50% Indigenous. She says it focuses exclusively on Indigenous recruitment and career development. The new policy will require annual reporting on workforce demographics to measure progress and ensure it's implemented consistently across departments. A new mentorship program for Indigenous persons will also be rolling out this year. The current plan will end at the end of March 2025, and then the new policy will come into effect. Jocelyn Chappell, CBC News, Yellowknife.
For more on the new policy, we're joined by NWT Finance Minister Caroll Wozniak. Welcome, Minister.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so we saw some of those statistics in Jocelyn's story that we're at about 30%, and that's been kind of a static statistic.
That's right.
Of Indigenous employment, not where the GNWT wants to be.
That's right.
And that's with these affirmative action policies that are long-standing. So how will this new policy help boost those numbers?
Well, the new policy is part of a much bigger action plan, which is the Indigenous Recruitment and Retention Framework. Doing affirmative action on its own, treating it like that's going to be a silver bullet, simply hasn't worked, and that's been borne out not only in our jurisdiction, other jurisdictions as well. But we are, I think, the only one left in Canada that's trying to approach the problem this way. So we have a 35-year-old policy that simply we're finding isn't working. So what we're trying to do now is refocus. And, I think they have the labor market statistics up there showing that amongst non-Indigenous Northerners, unemployment rate of 1%. But amongst Indigenous Northerners, obviously, this is a group we need to focus on. So we're refocusing the policy to look exclusively at Indigenous Canadians, which is a group that is obviously underrepresented in the public service, and yet a population in the Northwest Territories that has a large number of Indigenous people. So focusing exclusively on that, which makes it, again, focused, makes it simpler, makes it clearer, makes it easier to apply. And one other big part about it is that it actually now aligns better with the kind of data that we have from Statistics Canada. So being a Northern Indigenous person isn't something that Statistics Canada gathers data on. So we aren't even in a position to be gathering data to truly understand just how representative or not this policy or the public service has been. So what we're doing now by making this change is actually aligning with that data. We can do a better job of monitoring, better job of reporting, and ultimately that should help us have a better job of success.
Okay. I want to go back to, I understand it's data-based and what Statistics Canada has. One criticism that we've already seen from MLA Kieran Testart is that it leaves out non-Indigenous Northerners, right, and also the removal of the priority status for Indigenous Northerners, which he calls, quote, a slap to the face a slap in the face to reconciliation. So what do you make of those concerns?
So there's two different cohorts there, right? So, and I actually want to start, well, it's either one. Let's start with Indigenous Northerners and the idea of, because we're now expanding the definition of an Indigenous person, rather than aligning it to peoples who are connected to groups exclusively within the Northwest Territories and very specific groups within the Northwest Territories. There's a big group of people that are left out. All Indigenous Canadians who don't happen to have that connection here, and yet you may be a Gwich'in person from Old Crow, you do not qualify. Nunavummiut, Inuit person does not qualify. So when we did a lot of engagement over the last couple of years, this is a group of people living in the North, often born in the North, who have actually reached out and said, you know, this doesn't apply to me. I have no priority status. I don't have a P1 or the initial priority status. So, you know, aligning ourselves with colonial borders isn't something that we think we want to do. We don't need to do. We want to be representative. We want to have a workforce that is representative, that brings on people who have more of an Indigenous worldview, perspective, values. Some of those folks may come from across the NWT border, but they're hopefully going to bring that perspective to the public service if they choose to apply. So I don't expect that there's a lineup at the border of folks coming north, although we'll certainly be happy to have more people coming north. I do expect this is an opportunity for us to truly look at what Indigenous Canadians, you know, who they are, how they're defined, and hopefully bring them into the public service. The second cohort of people, and you know, this policy, 1989, 35 years, never changed. It's hard to change things, and I think people can get scared of what that might mean and how that might work. So the cohorts right now, the second group, long-term Northerners, I think, has a notion that this is a protected group, but it's very specific. It's if you're born in the North or you've lived more than half your life in the North. So quite a lot of people who are long-term Northerners do not qualify under that. And people who might have been born in the North and moved away, but actually do qualify under that. So there's some odd results that can arise, and we're not necessarily reflecting people who are committed to the North, who are living in the North, who have knowledge of the North, who have connections to community. There's other ways to go about understanding job recruitment that will still tie to the communities of the North. So for example, you know, one of them might be within a job description or job qualifications, prioritizing Northern knowledge, specific community knowledge, language knowledge, doing regional based, you know, saying, you know, you have to be based within a certain you know, boundary around a particular community or within a certain region. So there's a lot of other tools that we can use that are actually more targeted, that will get at the roots of the kind of qualifications we want to be able to serving people in particular regions, rather than a policy that, again, can often result in excluding sometimes people that we want, and yet including others who may not have the kind of knowledge that we're trying to get at.
Okay, Minister, I want to ask one more quick question before we wrap up.
Sure.
And this is about support from other MLAs kind of more broadly. We heard today on our CBC afternoon show that on the NWT that Julian Morse, who's the chair of the Standing Committee on Government Operations, is not supporting this. He says the committee is not supporting this specifically. And Karen Testart also mentioned there were some other MLAs that feel like they're not going to be supporting this. So I just wonder if that lines up with the conversations that you've been having with MLAs.
So, you know, and I have actually spoken to a couple of the MLAs myself, including the chair of the standing committee. So there's different committees that we would go to. Finance goes to the committee that's chaired by Mr. Morse. And he and I had a good conversation about how we can move forward. This is a policy of cabinet, so it's not a piece of legislation, but we do want to maintain our engagements with all MLAs. So we had been to committee, the Department of Finance and myself, back in April, and again in August, sent quite a bit of background information. I think there's still some uncertainty, specifically around the groups that you mentioned, around ensuring, you know, that Northerners, long-term Northerners, have access to positions. So again, with a 1% unemployment rate, I'm not concerned that people aren't being hired. Our student program and internship program continues to apply to students who have spent a year in the North before going off to school, so they'll still get that priority access. And then these tools that we have around ensuring employment that is relevant to communities that can target those skill sets. There's probably a lot in there that, you know, when I spoke to the chair, that we can sit down and say, look, we can work through these things, make sure that people's communities understand what's available to them, make sure that that these tools are being utilized to continue to reflect those communities and the people there. And I'm confident we can get to a place where at the end of the day, we're hiring a representative public service, which I think is something that we all share a goal of.
Okay, Minister, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Residents of Nunavut say they're happy to see the return of Canada Post. Workers are back on the job today after a 4-week strike, but some northern and remote communities say they're not out of the woods, and it could still be months before backed-up cargo arrives. The CBC's Mahnur Mubarak has that story.
The strike began over 1 month ago, with workers fighting for better wages and working conditions. It's left remote communities in the north who rely on the service in the dark. Inuit Tapiriit Kanatami, or ITK, a national organization representing Inuit across Canada, called for Canada Post to be deemed an essential service, stating Inuit living in Inuit Nunagat don't have other ways of getting goods and services into communities other than air travel at this time of year. Natan Obed is ITK's president.
We rely on Canada Post for the services of essential items, whether they be for medical purposes or for food security purposes.
ITK released a statement saying they hope both parties will come to an agreement and that Inuit communities are uniquely dependent on Canada Post and welcome the continuation of postal service, especially during the busy holiday season. It's a sentiment echoed by Joe Savikatak Jr., the mayor of Akved.
Well, people are happy, definitely. Right on time just before Christmas. I am hoping that whatever online orders were placed that were meant to be arriving before Christmas do arrive in time.
But postal workers are going to be dealing with a large backlog of parcels and deliveries. Even though the post offices in the territory are part of a different bargaining group or located at a dealer location, they are impacted. Exan Moffates is the president of the union here in Nunavut.
So there's like thousands and thousands, millions actually, of parcels stuck. So when they stopped to strike, all those trucks filled with parcels have to sit. So there's hundreds and hundreds of trucks with parcels ready to go to the airport, ready to go to offices, right?
She says there isn't a set timeline for when people can expect to receive their packages yet. Mahnur Mubarak, CBC News, Iqaluit.
With the holidays approaching, Sax Harbor NWT residents have been getting together for all kinds of festive events. The CBC's Luke Caroll is in the community. He's been hitting up some of those events. Luke, he's joining me now live from Sax. Where are you right now?
Hey, Megan. Yeah, I'm just outside the school gym, or just you can maybe see behind me. There's some people getting seated, getting ready for a holiday concert. It's going to involve kids from kindergarten to grade 7 who are going to be performing some Christmas tunes. So this is just one of several events that have been going on throughout the month, and just one of a few that I've been to since getting here.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait. I hope we can hear a little bit of the concert, but I'll keep my fingers crossed. In the meantime, tell us about some of the other events that you've been to while you're there, Luke.
Yeah, so yesterday we attended the some Arctic sports that were taking place right here. We got a chance to see a lot of kids showing up to that and playing different traditional games, which was really great. Then we also, it wasn't just for the kids though, there was later in the evening some adult games, adult Christmas games, which had some really fun ones. Take a look at one of them right now. So as you can see there's a competition where you have to unroll this streamer, one of those decorative streamers, without ripping the paper. So yeah, those were just some of the events. And again, this is, as you know, Sax Harbor, it's the furthest northern community in the NWT. So not a whole lot of daylight this time of year, about maybe 2-3 hours of kind of a dawn sort of setting. So I think people are really enjoying the chance to, gather and do some activities while it's so dark out.
That game looks really fun and also really hard, Luke. I don't think that's an easy task. What else have you learned about the community while you've been on this trip?
Yeah, so a big part of this has been talking to people about the history of Sax Harbor, as well as its future. So we spoke to a few elders who told us about how it was kind of first settled as a place for trappers to get Arctic foxes, and they would often sell the pelts after that. Now there's not as many people who are doing that. Some people do it recreationally, sell the pelts, but it's the cost has gone down, so it's not as common. But we also talked about the future of the community. It's right on the Northwest Passage, so it could be a really key place for Arctic sovereignty in that conversation. So people can learn more about these stories. They're going to be airing on the Trailbreaker tomorrow morning. It's going to be a Sax Harbor themed episode, and as well as Thursday. And we'll also have some stories on Northbeat as well. So between 6 and 8 a.m. tomorrow and 6 p.m. Throughout the rest of the week on Northbeat.
I know those are Mountain Time, of course. Luke, thank you so much. Looking forward to seeing all of your incredible stories.
Thanks for having me, Megan.
That was the CBC's Luke Caroll live at a Christmas concert in Sax Harbor, NWT. We'll be right back.
Alcoholics Anonymous. We're here to help. For more information, visit aa.org and download the Meeting Guide app.
Earth is our collective home. That makes us all family. As family, we strive to love and protect each other. Diversity of species is our strength. We are all connected. We survive and thrive together. We celebrate many things this season and make many choices. Taking care of our family should be the easiest. We're in this together.
We're often drawn to people who have something we want in ourselves.
But it doesn't mean living like you're running out of time. It means living in a place of hope.
How can any of this be fair?
It shows you where it starts, where it ends.
Where we're all about explaining and expanding.
Stream anytime, CBC News.
The chief of the First Nation of Notchonayak says an audit of the Yukon government could prevent future environmental disasters. The First Nation recently called on the Auditor General to launch a performance audit of the Eagle mine failure. Notchonayak accuses the territory of long-standing systemic problems that require accountability. Chief Donna Hope says issues date back to devolution. In the roughly 2 decades since, the territory has yet to modernize key pieces of legislation, chief among them, antiquated mining laws.
This proposed audit would provide guidance to government. It could advance responsible, sustainable mineral governance in the North and help us prevent the reoccurrence of an environmental disaster like we see in my backyard. The proposed audit would also assist in advancing long stagnated commitments around devolution, commitments which Canada must work in good faith to implement in accordance with the Honour of the Crown, for which we've been waiting over 20 years for.
Hope says the Auditor General's office has yet to confirm whether it will accept the First Nations request. In an email to CBC, the Yukon government says it will comply with the audit if one goes ahead. Stephen Charlie says he's the victim of, quote, false allegations. The Liard First Nation chief is facing a non-confidence vote tonight at a meeting in Watson Lake, Yukon. A group of First Nation citizens say Charlie has hired family members, overseen a toxic workplace, and excluded counsel from decisions. In a letter posted on Facebook today, Charlie says none of the allegations are true, and he says the non-confidence vote is invalid. Reached by CBC this afternoon, Charlie declined to comment. The latest numbers from Statistics Canada show inflation continuing to move lower. November's inflation rate was 1.9%, down from 2% in October. But holiday shoppers say they're still feeling the pinch. Paula Duhotchek has more.
At this Calgary mall, shoppers say they're still feeling squeezed by the high cost of living.
It's really high. Yeah, it's crazy for everybody.
It is very expensive. It's so hard to afford now. Grocery and everything is so expensive.
To be honest, yes, the prices have gone up since I moved to Canada, which was 7 years ago.
While inflation has stabilized around 2%, prices are still going up. Today's increases adding on to the gains we've seen since the pandemic. Compared to 2021, groceries are up about 20%, and in the last 3 years, the cost of shelter has gone up roughly 19%.
Shelter costs are starting to moderate a bit. It's still the leading cause of inflation, but it's not as bad as it used to be.
Shoppers also got some relief last month on Black Friday. Retailers actually put items on sale. Compared to the month before, Canadians paid lower prices for clothes, cell phone plans, and furniture. Now, with just a week left till Christmas, those deals are over, but shoppers say they're still hoping to find a bargain ahead of the holidays. Paula Duhacek, CBC News, Calgary.
The ice bridge over the Yukon River at Dawson City is open for the season. The Yukon Department of Highways and Public Works officially opened it this morning. The ice bridge connects the ferry landings on either side of the river. The crossing can accommodate light vehicles that weigh up to 5,000 kilograms. Sebastian Weiser lives in West Dawson across the river from the main part of town. He welcomes the news, saying this will make life easier for him and all his neighbors on the west side of the river.
For everyone on this side, we're definitely looking forward to be able to drive again across, and obviously good news for everyone. And just like along with anyone else, I'll be happy to take advantage of it in the next few days to check it out.
Weiser says a way across the river to get groceries and supplies is great, and access to emergency services is essential. The Yukon Department of Highways and Public Works says 511 has the latest information on the ice bridge for those who need it. A new comedy series set in a fictional town in the Canadian Arctic is gaining a lot of hype. Last night, we introduced you to North of North. It was created by Inuit filmmakers with an Inuk lead actor and shot in Nunavut. It's premiering on CBC Gem on January 7th, but the CBC's Juanita Taylor got a sneak peek alongside a packed theater in Iqaluit.
For people here in Iqaluit, the star-studded red carpet for a groundbreaking new comedy, North of North, is both a party and a moment of pride.
Yeah, it's a landmark in history in terms of cinematography, and it's quite the honor to live here and be here.
Hi, it's Yaya.
The show follows a young Inuk mother fumbling her way toward a new life in a small Arctic community.
The accident made me realize I need a fresh start.
No. A world that the show's Nunavut-based creators say is built for comedy.
Making North of North a comedy was the most authentic way to tell this story. We are people that love to laugh. We laugh our way through things.
Well, I think a lot of Inuit will see the show and feel like they recognize a lot of the characters, like that could be their mother, that could be their sister.
The town is fiction, but for people here, it's relatable.
Oh my gosh, there was a lot of things that hit really close to home, but a lot of similarities, but a lot of, it's in a very nice, fresh perspective, and I'm really grateful to have Inuit representation in the show.
North of North features rising star Anna Lamb from HBO's True Detective Night Country. She hopes the story of modern Inuit life will resonate around the world.
What I hope people worldwide get out of this show, I think sometimes people only understand Inuit as like a historical people. We don't exist anymore. It's like, well, no, we've always been here and we've always been so connected to the rest of the world.
This Indigenous arts journalist also hopes it changes perceptions.
It allows us to be more fully human in the eyes of the people who view these stories. If you're only ever viewed for your trauma, you're not really seen as whole.
With no studios, it wasn't easy to film in Iqaluit. But with the first studio now under construction, Ang Nakukbaril is optimistic about the territory's film industry.
It's a space that we wish we had access to when we were starting out, and we hope it'll be a game changer for the Nunavut film industry.
The first episode will premiere on CBC and APTN in January. The global launch for North of North will be in the spring. Juanita Taylor, CBC News, Iqaluit.
The Canadian Filipino Association of the Yukon is expanding its reach. The association is taking over a new space in downtown Whitehorse. It recently launched a new website. It's also running its Beacon of Hope program, which helps newcomers navigate services like banking and healthcare. And in the new year, the association is planning to branch outside of the capital city.
We're not going to do activities only in Whitehorse, but we are going to the communities. Like, it's the first time that we're going to give emphasis on the idea of our database. To further make a good impact to our community, we have to reach out. So bring our services and simple joy of meeting each other, that they belong. We are going to communities.
The association is planning outreach to several Yukon communities. It's planning to visit Carcross, Haines Junction, and Carmacks in the new year. A Whitehorse man has returned home after a solo journey in an electric vehicle. Brett Chandler drove from Whitehorse to Saskatchewan in his electric Ford Mustang. He left last month and returned to Whitehorse last week. Temperatures dropped to -30 throughout the journey. He says he spent around 9 to 10 hours charging.
The technology is really good. To be able to travel is really good. I feel like these new chargers that are available have kind of opened the world up for us here.
The Yukon government has added charging stations around the territory. Chandler says he spent a total of around $400 to power his trip. And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
What's it like working and living on a ranch? The only way to survive is to have passion and perseverance. And in my day, we called that true grit.
Priced beef now available at Garland Foods. If he wants a war, he's got one.
I wanted to make dinner for you on Saturday.
Are you as good in the kitchen as you are on the dance floor?
It doesn't mean living like you're running out of time. It means living in a place of hope.
This is CBC North on your smart TV, because CBC News is now streaming local. Local news and weather on your connected TV or favorite device. CBC News North, streaming now.
When we work to end inequity, we help start something better. Support Even the Odds.
I've been waiting 8 years for this moment.
It feels like magical. I'm still like pinching myself.
Bakers, now you are finally here.
Ruby! You're gonna regret this.
You tried to kill my son.
You're the one who tried to kill him. It's all my fault.
Coronation Street. Watch free on CBC Gem.
I want to have a brew.